We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Our guest this morning is Steve Bland, CEO for MTA here in Metro Nashville and the Regional Transportation Authority. Good to have you on. Talking about the future of transportation, mass transit. The mayor this week also announcing the first steps really that I think can start with MTA. Is there a demographic breakdown of the type of rider that takes the bus these days? Yep. Is it predominantly those who, I'm wondering, I know it's a mix, but I think that the two types would be there are folks that are taking the bus out of necessity because frankly they don't have any other form of transportation. And then there are folks that may have vehicles but they recognize the public transit is so much more convenient for their situation. Right. Which is more? The ones who have cars and choose to ride that, or the ones who ride it because they really have no other choice?
Well, it's an interesting question because what we would refer to as our frequent, our power users, and they're the folks who are using it not just to go back and forth to work, but who are using it pretty much for all their life activities. They make up about 2/3 of our total ridership, but because they're using it so often, you know, it's sort of, it may be not as many people making up more trips, where then you have that group that's pretty much I'm back and forth to work, and that's essentially what I use it for. Or back and forth to school. School is becoming a much bigger percentage of our trips anymore.
That's what students.
Youth ridership is growing. It's probably our fastest growing segment. But trips to and from work make up about 65% of our total transit trips in the region.
Trips to and from work make up most of that.
More so than school, shopping,
do tourists
social.
use it?
Yeah, predominantly it's heavily used by tourists, mostly the Music City circuit, what I'd call some of the closer in routes.
Okay.
We actually see a fair amount of tourist traffic on the Star. I've always been surprised when I've ridden it to find we even have folks coming in from Europe who are so used to rail systems. Right. They kind of, that's what they look for first.
That's I would bet if you're from Europe.
I'm not going to say they're huge numbers, but anecdotally it's, you know, what are you doing on here? How did you find out about it? Oh, I'm here from Europe.
And that's how we get around. Yeah, Europe, of course, has a huge train system. Do you know, has the advent of services like Uber put a dent at all in Music City? I think still that would be more costly, Uber, than a bus ticket, but how about that?
Yeah, well, without a doubt, there are trips that were probably done on transit 4 years ago that are using Uber or Lyft now. On the other hand, we're also looking at it as an opportunity. You know, one of our biggest challenges is what we call our first mile, last mile problem. So if we're running a long distance route, say in the Gallatin Road corridor, and you go out to Madison, well, there's an awful lot of development that is not directly on Gallatin Road, and how do you link that up? Right. And it's just not efficient for us to run that network on every street. Yeah. So to be able to connect up with traditional taxi, Uber, Lyft, our own access ride, the door-to-door system, actually this coming month our board's going to be awarding a contract for technology that will allow us to use our door-to-door system to maybe do some of those trips that pull people over that mile or so, you know, from their home to a bus route.
Meaning the door-to-door would be when you get off the main bus route, there's one of those door-to-door shuttles that would take you there.
That gets you that last half mile, what have you.
That makes sense. A typical, if you can, and excuse me, because I have not been on an MTA bus in years, frankly. And
we got to get you there.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against it. It's just, like I said, it doesn't work for my crazy schedule.
Next show we will do it on the bus.
Okay, I would like to do that. Technical headache there, but we could give it a try. But I have nothing against it. I've said time and again, I would gladly take public transit over my car. And I've lived in much larger cities. I know you came from Pittsburgh. You know, I've lived in San Francisco. I've lived in Washington D.C. and I'll park my car. I love that system. But my point is, what is the cost in general these days of a ticket for a bus? Sure. Is there a day pass, or if I'm going from one point to the other with transfer?
Local fares $1.70, and I think one of the noteworthy things that people will need to be aware of that's been proposed in the mayor's budget, and assuming that budget it gets adopted by Metro Council would go into effect in August, we currently charge every time you board the bus. So if you're riding from East Nashville, you come into downtown, you have to change to another bus, say going down Nolensville Pike, you pay twice. Under the mayor's proposal, that would go away, that we would reinstate free transfers.
So you would have a transfer to go over this. So you pay $1.70 down and then another $1.70 there.
Yep. The other thing we're working on that you'll start seeing being rolled out at the end of this year and then through 2018 is a new fare collection system that will include things like smart cards and mobile payments.
How do you pay now when you get on the bus? I'm just wondering.
We have magnetic stripe cards, we take cash, and then there are some limited smart cards. For instance, Vanderbilt University has a program with us where their card is recognized, and they'll underwrite the trips for their employees, as an example, or the state of Tennessee, has that type of a program.
Can you get a month pass?
Yes. Yep.
How much is unlimited ride month pass would be what?
Yeah, it's like $84.
84, so you decide how much you're getting around, and it may be cost effective for you depending on your usage.
Well, and the beauty of what the new system will allow us to do is right now, on that monthly pass as an example, you kind of have to decide up front, am I going to use this enough to make it worthwhile? Where what we'll be able to do in the new system is what we'll call affinity pricing. So you don't have to necessarily choose that up front. We can automatically get you best value pricing.
And then you just get billed at the end of the month?
So if you, well, generally they're connected to accounts. So for folks who are used to, I come from the Northeast, so Easy Pass is very common on some of the toll roads up there. So you would establish an account, and then as you ride, we would deduct funds from that account. But then if you ride over a certain amount, we could build in discounts that essentially throw you free trips or additional discounts.
That's a good idea. All right, let's go to Tony. Good morning, Tony.
Yeah, good morning, Nick.
Hey.
Now, a couple of things I want direct answers for. I know he's on a hot seat because the election coming up, the governor and all. But the thing I said, I can't understand how they got this funding for this MTA, and they're cutting all the welfare, food stamps, and everything else. If you got a president in office that's not secure in his position and grounds, all that could be changed. All the money could be redirected somewhere else. For instance, I live over in East Nashville. Now, Douglas Avenue, this train right here stopped in the middle of the tracks. I'd rather have somebody going down the track, hauling people back and forth to town, and then that way it won't tire people up. It won't get stopped in the middle of the track. So I'm thinking, what is going on with his budget? Because the way the politics is, Nick, you know as well as I do, whoever gets in office can redirect that money and change it around.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe you can talk big picture. There are people that don't understand what money comes from where. I'm with Tony on this, and the fact is, this mayor that we have now is well-intentioned for what she wants to do, and she's going to be long gone before this whole plan is ever even close to being finalized, or in terms of being in place. What do you think? Funding, how much do you have to think about that?
Well, historically in transportation broadly, and I'm not just talking about mass transit, I'm talking about roads and bridges, what have you, it's historically been a local, state, federal partnership, as well as with user fees, and now we're also seeing more private investment. I think the issue you're seeing here in Nashville around broad mobility, not just mass transit, but roads, bridges, the pedestrian network, is there is so much broad support that it becomes, and we've seen this in other cities, that it sort of transcends that electoral piece, that there's going to be an ebb and flow, and that there might be an up and down at a state level or at a local level, particularly if you hit an economic downturn. But for instance, at the state level, Governor Haslam's Improve Act just passed this year, significant increase in transportation funding, and it was supported on both sides of the aisle, conservatives, liberals, you name it, recognizing that whether it's for business development or it's for helping people, kind of work their way up the economic ladder, you've got to have mobility. It's a basic requirement of modern society.
All right, but the costs, do you worry that the money, well, some of the stuff, your stuff, not so much, okay, but as it evolves, there's going to be, we've said, what is it? More than $1 billion.
It's billions of dollars.
I mean, I guess that's where he's talking about. And again, Tony sometimes goes off to other social programs, and you don't have to. It doesn't have to be one or the other, Tony. You know that. But that's a lot of money. I guess that's
the money is the big. If it didn't cost anything, you wouldn't have us on.
Well,
it wouldn't be an interesting topic.
You came here from Pittsburgh. Were you there before they had the light rail put in? Was it already in place?
No, it was their light rail goes back to the old streetcar.
Okay, the old streetcars. Now I know Portland, Oregon, years ago put in the big heavy investment to get light rail in there. I'm just wondering, and of course they thought it was expensive back then, and now of course they've got a big smile on their face because we've got this great system in it. Now look what it costs.
Right. The points I'd make on it are, number one, things don't get any cheaper. You know, if we say, oh my gosh, it's too expensive to do now, we should wait and see what happens. It's not going to get any cheaper.
Yeah, right.
Second point is, over the next 25 years in this region, the current long-range transportation plan of TDOT and the Metropolitan Planning Organization calls for us to spend $8.5 billion to essentially just preserve the existing. So regardless of whether we do anything radically different or not, we're already spending a lot of money on it. And then if you add to it, you know, for instance, the point Brian was making earlier, well, how much time am I spending in traffic?
Right.
You know, how is it having an impact on attracting jobs and business to the region? Atlanta's finding that now. Nashville's getting great business prospects who were taking a hard look at Atlanta and were concerned about, you know, getting around that region.
Right.
So one way or the other, it's going to cost us a lot of money. The question is, where do you get return on investment? And how do you build a system that helps everybody move up, you know, not just, frankly, a select few?
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned Atlanta. You know, I mean, a lot of people worry with what they see happening here. Are we on a path toward what Atlanta is? And I like Atlanta. I was down there just a few weeks ago, and I like it, and they've tried to get it going, but it is a sprawl. And getting around can be a pickle there as well. They do have a decent transit system that went in and opened up before the Olympics in '96. But, you know, you worry that if we don't do something, we're going to end up in the same position that Atlanta was, and they're playing catch-up constantly. Hey, look, we're already in catch-up mode right now.
Well, and I think one of the things, and again, what the mayor's recognizing in the Transportation Action Agenda, it isn't just roads, bridges, mass transit, what have you. It's how do we develop around those things? So how do we have, you know, good development patterns where we can have pedestrian connections? I live in East Nashville like Tony does, and one of the things I love about the neighborhood is I can walk in that neighborhood. You know, I can walk to restaurants, I can walk to the grocery store. So having those sorts of options connected with strong roadway networks, strong transit networks, you know, gives people more options so that as we continue to grow, it's not that traffic goes away. You know, show me a city with no traffic and I'll show you a city with no economy. But that people have options, and we can continue to sustain a good quality of life.
Let's talk about some of the unorthodox traffic, I guess, methods.
Yes.
Our modes of transportation, unorthodox modes of transportation. I, for one, am a strong advocate of an MTA river taxi bus. All right, I want a river taxi from downtown here to take me to Clarksville or something like that.
Folks who watch this show, you should really do our breaks as an outtake, because some of the most interesting questions from Nick come up during the breaks.
River taxi, not an option?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, river taxis are an option, but what I always say is consider the point-to-point trip. So it's not just how do I get from the dock to the dock. People want to get from where they are to where they need to be, and it's, as I refer to, that first mile, last mile issue.
And you know what, and I know this is outside your realm a bit, but when I was in DC recently, especially for tourists that come, and Nashville's a great place where there's a lot of neat things to see in kind of a condensed area, even though you have to deal with the traffic. The bicycles, the bike racks. Now we've got the red bike racks here or whatever. DC was awesome. Instead of going around, you could hop on one of those suckers and take it down to the Smithsonian, put it there, come back out of Smithsonian, go across to one of the other museums, make your way over to the Capitol, whatever you want to do. The bikes were great. Did you get any sense from your talk with folks with the transportation meetings that the bikes here are being utilized the way they should or not?
Well, it's definitely a growing sector, and you see a lot of the bicycle users who are really advocating for that broad network. So whether that includes bringing bicycles on transit, but as we say, you know, there's always going to be an operating limit to how many bikes you can get on, particularly a bus.
Well, where does it go now?
So the idea of linking, you mean B-cycle?
Yeah, where does the bike go on a bus right now?
We have racks on the front of the bus.
So you just you put it on the front?
Yep, and they're actually very well used.
Okay.
But that will have a practical limit, particularly on a crowded bus. So the idea of B-cycle stations being at significant transit stops, so that's part of that first mile, last mile solution. For some people, not everybody's going to ride a bicycle. Some will. You probably would.
If there was a B stop here and then one in front of the station, that would have called from the Music City Star.
I would, as long as I'm not in traffic. I have a hard time saying that 4-inch line's going to stop someone from.
Right, that's the other thing. In DC, you're zipping around the roads, you could get clipped. I'm wondering if they get hit very often, but.
Well, and part of the mayor's agenda is what's referred to as our Vision Zero goals, and that's the idea that we move towards zero pedestrian fatalities in traffic accidents, and it is an issue here. We have some of our main pikes, Gallet and Nolensville, these are almost like highways, but that have significant pedestrian activity. So how do we make those roadways safe for motorists, safe for pedestrians, safe for transit users, safe for bicyclists, safe for kids? You know, we have so much school activity going on. I don't know how you change it.
We do the stories every time there's a pedestrian hit. It's not, I wouldn't say frequent, but they do happen.
Yeah.
And usually, unfortunately, they're hit and runs. But a lot of the times, you know, you have someone not crossing in the crosswalk after dark and they get clipped. There's no way you're going to prevent that. It's awful they get hit, but if they're doing that, you know, that's on them as well as the motorist that hits them. Not that a motorist should ever leave a scene, but I don't know how you stop some of these pedestrian accidents.
Part of it is designing that infrastructure to realize it's more, the goal of that roadway should be more than just how fast can we move cars through a space. So particularly as we're seeing the development, like think about the 5 Points area in Gallatin Road.
Okay.
So you're getting, you know, what I'll call development on both sides of Gallatin Road. I see a lot more pedestrian activity, whether it's transit users, which is part of that, or folks just going from one place to another, an Airbnb to a restaurant or what have you. So the idea that that roadway needs to be designed to accommodate all sorts of users, and how can we adapt to that? Still making sure we have throughput of traffic as a goal, but it's not the only goal.
Take a break on that. Back with our final segment. More of your calls if you'd like to join us at 737-7587. Steve Bland, CEO with MTA. More right after this.